formulated opinions and questions, I'm sure. So this is your opportunity to ask them from our panel of experts. And how we'll have you do that is, if you have a question, raise your hand, and Megan will come around with a microphone. And when the microphone is in your hand, what we'd like you to do is stand up, clearly tell us your name, and very importantly, what school you're representing this morning, and then ask your question or make your comment. Now, you can address your question to one of the panelists in particular or to the panel in general. And once you've asked your question, it's fine for you to go ahead and sit down. Okay? All right. Let's meet our panelists who have given their time at this very busy point in the year to be with us this morning to talk with us about the future of career and technical education in the state of California. We have with us today Eric Guerra from the Office of Assemblymember Warren Furutani, Dr. Patrick Ainsworth, Director of the High Schools Initiative Career Technical Education Office for the California Department of Education, and Tim Taylor, an Assistant Superintendent from the Sacramento County Office of Education who works with regional occupational programs. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have each of the panelists take about 2 minutes, tell us a little bit about their background, particularly as it relates to career and technical education, and we'll get started with your questions from there. So why don't I start all the way on the other side. Eric?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning. And as a Sac State alumni, it's a pleasure to have you as a moderator. My background, there's a lot of high school students out there, so I went to Sac State and got my engineering degree in electrical electronic engineering at Sac State, and then I also got my master's in public policy and public administration there. I bring that up because in my duty with the Office of Assemblymember Warren Furutani, I not only work as his legislative director, but as consultant to the Committee on Career Technical Education and Workforce Development. And so the Assembly member is very focused on what we can do to enhance career technical education and make it robust and lively back in the schools. He feels that over the last 2 decades, we've slowly deteriorated career technical education and left it on the fringes as a way to get students engaged. And I was a remedial student, learning skills student, and it was career technical education that actually got me interested in college. I was a low performing student, and so it's an example of what can be used to help students, motivate them if they choose to pursue a career in the sciences or technology or not. But it's a method that we can get students engaged by hands-on learning.
Thank you.
Well, good morning. It's great to be here. When she asked what's your background relative to career technical education, I remember sitting in high school a few years ago in the late 60s and taking courses in high school and thinking to myself, why am I taking these things? What relevance does this have to what I want to do with my life? And I remember struggling with geometry at the time, and I had enrolled in an auto shop class. And this auto shop teacher opened my eyes up because I started learning about the internal combustion engine and how things work together, how a system works, and how logic works relative to the system, and how the inventors of this came up with this system. And you know what? All of a sudden, geometry started snapping into place. And I ended up passing geometry, and my teacher in auto shop said, you should become an automotive designer. Well, I knew I was going to go into people business, but I remembered that experience. Then later on, as I accidentally stumbled forward in education, in my career, I became a high school counselor. And I found myself really, really good at getting kids into college. You know, the fact of the matter is, that's easy. You got the top kids, You write nice letters, you make sure you get them in the right courses, and they do okay. But what about the rest, the 70% of kids that weren't going to college? There wasn't much there. And the teachers that were in the career technical were considered kind of second class for someone else's kids to go to. And I found that to be a horrible situation. And I went on with the County Office of Education in Riverside, worked in the ROP, and have dedicated my life now to changing our high school system. Because you walk into high schools and they're remarkably like the high school I went to. And we still have about only 35% of the students that are prepared to go to college. That means 65% are not. And 20% of our students drop out. And can we as an economy afford this? Can high school remain to be a place where we're only serving a small minority of students effectively and barely serving the rest? No. It's ridiculous. And so we need to change the way we do high schooling. And the one thing that we've seen that works is to give students a vision beyond their high school diploma to their success in their future life and their career. And by blending career technical education and academics, suddenly students become turned on. I'm turned on about that prospect, and that's why I'm doing this work.
I'm a proud graduate of Chico State University, and if I reflect back on my high school and college days, I agree with Dr. Ainsworth. I was always one that said, why are we studying this? And when I look back at my high school classes that I really enjoyed, I love the business courses. I remember our teacher said, if you learn how to type, you'll be successful in the business world, which made sense. So I took 4 years of typing just because now we call it keyboarding, but it was the old typewriters. But it made sense. If you could type, then you were going to be successful in writing your term papers and doing well. I remember taking a consumer math class, because I was like, okay, I understand math, but what is it about? And it was really, basically it taught you how to balance your checkbook and how to run your financial planning. It made a lot of sense to me, and that's been my passion, is to work really in the field of getting career tech programs to all of our children. I think my current job is to oversee the ROP programs, work directly with the 11 school districts here in Sacramento, and I'm a voice for the at-risk kids. I currently, all my other hat that I wear is we have our students here from some of our programs in the juvenile court system. Kids have been expelled in alternative ed, and that's where my teaching career path was. And I really believe you need to continue to provide relevant curriculum for all kids so they're hooked in school. And I think today you'll hear a lot more about, we set the foundation of real strong academics in California schools, but we forgot one thing, and that was the voice and minds of children. And like you heard from the three of us, when we were in high school, it was relevant curriculum that made sense. That what's this mean to me? How's it going to help me? And that's what we'll be able to share with you more throughout this morning.
Okay, so you've met our panel of experts, and based on what they've told you, you can see they've got a lot to offer here this morning on our topic. So who wants to get us started with a question? Megan?
I'm Alex Mingy, representing Lodi High.
Good morning.
My question is, I'm pretty sure everybody can agree that ROP programs benefit, and it says in this booklet 33% of the programs are commonly based jobs. So is the main problem the budget? Is that the number one thing, or is there another problem with why ROP programs are being cut? Or is it mainly budget problems?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the budgets are stretching everybody's resources. But what we're finding out in Sacramento is, as we talk to the superintendents and the school boards, is if you have a quality career tech academy that really provides a pathway to post-secondary options for kids, we're not seeing a lot of cuts in ROP programs for quality programs. And what the superintendents have realized is they need those programs to keep kids engaged. I was just telling Dr. Ainsworth, I was down at Elk Grove High School, and they've got a digital media academy there that I spent the morning visiting. And what the teacher down there has done is really, he's gone down in the 8th grade at Kerr Middle School, and he recruits kids who are on the verge of dropping out. And 80% of his kids in his academy have data where they're not attending school, they're not doing well with grades, they're about to head into the alternative ed world. They've moved them into that academy, and they're in their 3rd year, and they see the kids that they've gathered, and they've brought forth great curriculum. They've got a great digital media lab and program. Those programs are difficult to cut even in bad times, because it doesn't make sense to cut a program like that that's saving so many children's lives, but also increasing the attendance of all the kids. So I think when we get down to the ROP cuts, if there are some to be made, good programs are going to stay. Programs that are not up to the 21st century need to be cut, and we need to move them into other forms of career tech. But I'm not going to downplay the budgets are tough for all school districts right now, and difficult decisions are being made.
One thing, the ROP system was put in this categorical flex program, and many of our categorical programs are put in to this flex, where districts can go and take the money and use it for some other purpose. And many programs essentially have dissolved because districts have used the money for other purposes. What we've seen around the state is the ROPs were cut 20%. Almost all the state government was cut 20 to 25%, and local government. Even though we were cut 20%, there's not a single ROP that has dissolved around the state, and that's pretty exciting to me. The control was shifted locally, and local said this program's too important. So I agree with Tim. But the other side of that issue is, in a down economy, a historically bad economy where as many as 1 in 3 Californians are out of work, why would we be cutting education and job training programs? I mean, as a society, we have to come to grips with this issue. What is our top priority? And if we stand a chance economically, it's about education and training. And we've got to make a big decision in this state. Is it prisons or is it schools?
Working in this building, you see immediately the impacts that are going to happen, because you're faced with decisions and recommending to your boss, the assembly member you work for, how whether to support a cut, and whether we cut this option or we cut this option if we're not able to get the revenue that we need for schools. So it's a difficult situation, and we shouldn't downplay the budget situation, and it's something that we need to have an honest discussion, not just with your elected officials, but with your neighbors, because at the end of the day, this building is somewhat a reflection of the voting population. I mean, we're here because people elect leaders to come here and take a position. So we have to have a stronger conversation in our neighborhoods, within our schools, with our parent associations, with our churches, about the true cost of education. I mean, ROP courses, and I took typing at the time also as an ROP class, and I also took ag mechanics at the time, growing up in a rural area. And the cost to provide those courses is much more than your average math or English class. So the cost per instruction per student is always going to be much higher. And if we're going to train people to get a job, or to be able to compete for a job when you're 18 or even older, as returning students come, that give you a career ladder and a wage that's not forcing you to live paycheck to paycheck. We're going to have to be honest with our neighborhoods about the true cost of education and what we're willing to pay for.
Okay. Well, great energy up here from the panel, as you can see. Who's got a question for them?
Hi, my name is Ian Reynolds, and I am representing Leeway Palmeter. Now, this is for Tim Taylor. You said that you're going to be cutting RLP programs that are not in the 20th century. What exactly do you mean by that? Do you mean things that are not involving computers, involving machinery or whatnot? Or do you mean things that are not up to date in the fact that they're meeting the economic standards that supports our economy and the students as well?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you, in your booklet that you got, you can see that if we have an old wood shop class, that is a nice program, but is it really training somebody for construction, or are they training them for really jobs in that sector? We have to move those programs on, and it's difficult because some teachers have been running a very nice program, very nice vocational training program for 20 years, but the kids will get out of the class and head off to the community college and have to relearn all the skills of all the upgraded equipment. What we're trying to do locally is about a third of our ROP courses now in Sacramento are articulated with the community college. So kids now are starting to continue to receive college credit while they're in high school for courses. Our goal is to have all courses either articulated or in an A through G level, or definitely tied directly into a placement into a tech school. So I think if it's just a standalone vocational training program that's not teaching you the current skills, there's just too many other needs out there and too many other fields that we need to assist you in getting jobs.
I'm wondering, do any of you have a question about the green economy and how that's going to impact career and technical education? Anybody give any thought to that?
Hi, my name is Annette Zumba, and I'm an admissions advisor at MTI College. And I really fought for this whole idea of green technology. The responses that I get are that there's not an immediate need because there's not immediate jobs out there. What kind of jobs are you seeing this year versus 5 years from now and beyond that students could prepare themselves for on that level as well as in college levels?
I'll take a stab at this. In the Sacramento region, the Partnership for Prosperity, which is a group of all the cities and education institutions, came together and created some goals for our region. And one of those goals was to create Sacramento as a center for green technology. And it helped that our state was a leader in the climate change legislation and policy. What it's done is it's attracted about 27 or 30 businesses, 8 of which are international headquarters for green technologies, mostly around energy. That was a very strategic thing. In fact, if you look at the community colleges within the region, they all looked at this together and decided which occupations they would train for. And so you won't find the same thing at each one. And then the K-12 system, the ROPs are working with their community college to create a pipeline. So it is kind of a chicken and egg sort of situation. The economy is kind of keeping a lid on everything right now. But at the same time, I think we have to create a whole new generation of people trained with these skills. At the K-12 level, we realize that every single occupational sector, industry sector, has to infuse green elements within it. There are some particular green-related occupations, but every occupation has to become much more green in its approach. We have instituted a whole set of partnership academies, both through our state funding and SB 70 funding and through Energy Commission grants now, to increase the numbers of green partnership academies around the state. And we've increased dramatically in the range, I think, of probably around 150 green academies. So we're working hard to kind of build this capacity. Once industry sees that there is a capacity, they tend to go to those locations. So.
Yeah, I guess this term of green gets thrown a lot out, and so the immediate response is, oh, everybody, we're going to be putting solar panels on everybody's houses, and we're going to be installing a windmill in the backyard or something like that. But it's more of I believe, a conscious decision, as Patrick mentioned, to think about everything we do in life and figure out how more efficient can we be. And for those jobs in the future, I mean, they may be similar jobs that are going on now, but you have to be retrained and get the new skills to perform these efficiencies and to be able to provide a market of employers that can meet those demands that homeowners want. Because right now it's based on what consumers want. If consumers want more energy efficient homes, they're going to need contractors and people to build homes that are going to save the consumer money in the long run. And there are other situations. For example, here's an interesting one: smog check. Smog check is an interesting career or industry that doesn't require a college degree. It requires some certification, and it creates a lot of small business owners. And in California, we've been big on smog check because we want cleaner air. That's a very conscious decision of what we want. Now, as cars get smarter, per se, for lack of a better word, more advanced, the old type of smog check, which was running something in the tailpipe and revving up the gas for 15 to 20 minutes, is going to be a thing of the past, because we already have computer systems in vehicles that could do the smog check through onboard devices. So that's going to be a huge industry where we're going to have to train people who have traditionally been mechanics in smog check offices to be able to understand even more than they do so now the system of computers and onboard devices and how cars interface with some of the technology to test their smog levels. So I think there's things like that where there's industries already that are going to evolve. We're not necessarily, I think, we're going to create thousands of new types of industries or green industries. I think the industries are going to evolve, and we're going to need training for more people to provide what the consumer wants.
Yeah, I think to give you a specific example, I met with Sac City Unified the other day, and they have about $1.4 billion in modernization needs for their schools. They're very old. Their parking lots were built for the foot traffic, and a lot of their schools were built so the kids would walk to school. Now they need cars and all that. And listening to the director of facilities talking to some green people, it's just a different mindset. I mean, when they replace bulbs, there'll be a different replacement. When they work on their parking lots, they're going to look at solar-powered lights. With the roofs, you could throw the old tar up there or look to be more green. So it's really taking your dollars and your concepts. And when you talk, we were with the construction business, and their whole thing is, we'll go green. Just you need the money to pay for all this, and also we need to make sure our workers are trained in that area. So really, it's just a different mindset how we approach schools. And the nice thing about it is the purpose of the meeting was to make sure the academies, we have a construction academy at Burbank High School, will be able to shadow these projects. So the kids will be able to, as they modernize Burbank High School, have the kids in that academy work directly with the workers. They can't really do the work because they're under 18, but they can shadow. They can be part of the building of the school, so the kids are getting, again, some good internship skills and learning, really hands-on learning while they're redoing their school.
Megan?
Hi, I'm Sierra Sanchez, and I represent North Area Community School. And I have a question about ROP classes. It says in here that there's a 40% dropout rate, but the economy is dropping classes because they don't have enough money for it. But don't you think that more ROP classes that students are interested in, they would actually attend school more?
Well, sure. We have about 400,000 students enrolled in ROP statewide. And every time we've had a funding increase in ROPs for growth or cost of living, we've seen the number of students go up. ROPs are at a cap that was artificially created in 1982 based on whatever the number of students were enrolled at that time. Some communities like Elk Grove were real tiny, small places back in 1982, and now look at it. Because of that cap, Sacramento County does not have the percentage of ROP it should have. But nevertheless, even when we get new money for ROP, every time it goes in, the number of students go up. We could easily double overnight the number of ROP classes in our schools, and they would be packed. So I think we definitely know that they work. We have research that shows that students that go through ROP courses outperform high school, the general population, in almost every category. They go on to graduate, and even generally students in ROP start at a lower level than the general population, but after just 1 year in ROP, they catch up and graduate and go on to higher education, and in employment and training, they actually earn more than everyone else, and they advance faster in their occupations. So, well, yeah, I mean, I think we should invest more in ROP. I'd do it tomorrow. Just say, Eric, write me the check, and we'll get going. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think in this, I hope I don't repeat it too often today, but it's a political decision as a democratic body, as a state, that we have to take into consideration that education and funding education is what's going to pull us out of this economy. And we have two very different type of goals. We have a long-term goal and a short-term goal. We have a 2025, the year 2025 goal, where most of the studies have said that we have to have at least 40% of our workforce to have a bachelor's degree, a college degree. We're nowhere even close to that right now, and so that's a long-term goal, and that's an education that takes 5 to 6 years. But on the short-term goal, we need people trained now to go from one industry that maybe a manufacturing that has disappeared entirely from a region to a new occupation that's in demand. So identifying those, we're going to need ROP programs. We're going to need to fund community colleges. That's a huge factor. We're going to need to fund partnership academies and more funding in our high schools because these programs cost money. So I think that there's a piece where we have to be very vocal that if we want to get pulled out of this economy, we have to be able to train people for better paying jobs, because that's how we generate revenue, more tax revenue for public education. Is when people are working, making more money, there's more money for public education. So it's this cycle, and it's going to require a political decision of the public to say enough is enough. We have to fund education.
Eric, so let me ask you, it wasn't too many years ago where you sat where these students are in their age group, and I know that you are a very politically active college student. So what would you recommend? You say that we need to be vocal. What should students like this do who are nearing the age of 18 and voting age? What would you recommend for them when they leave today?
Well, it's interesting because the time has flown by pretty fast. It's been almost 10 years now. So, but I think the first thing that I would say is if you're eligible to register to vote, register to vote. If you're eligible to vote, vote. If for example, in my case, when I was a student at Sac State, I became a citizen while I was at Sac State, but I wasn't a citizen while I was at Sac State, and I had the ability to talk and influence people. So even though you can't vote, you can influence people. You can influence your friends. You can influence your family, and a lot of it comes down with just having simple conversations about what you like. We can have conversations whether you like country or whether you like classic rock or whatnot, and those are the same things that we have to have as frank and comfortable conversations about what we want for our schools and our community. So most of it's going to be just being comfortable to talk about the things you don't like and the things you do like, and the things you want with your school system. But the very first thing is register to vote. I mean, if you're 17, I believe you can register to vote now if you're going to be eligible to vote in the next election. So you should definitely register to vote, because politicians will look at how many people are registered in a certain area. Unfortunately, It may be self-serving or Machiavellian, but most political campaigns will go to a community and they'll look at that community and they'll try to identify where most of the voters are. If most of the voters in this area want something and there's very little voters in this community, there's an unfortunate big tendency to start looking at making sure that the majority of the voters who keep these people elected are happy. So as students, you know, like when I was a Sac State student, I was on campus making sure that students were registering to vote so that the local city council members, the local assembly members knew that, well, we got to keep Sac State students happy too because I don't want them voting against me. So you also got to be able to instill that type of pressure on your local electeds, and that's democracy.
Well, I think to be even more specific, we recently had a school board meeting, and we had 4 students from our schools come to the board meeting, and all 4 had graduated from our high schools either while they were incarcerated or while they were in a program where they had been expelled. And they spoke to our board very honestly. And we had one kid who sticks out in my mind. He graduated from our Sacramento County Boys Ranch program, Carson Creek High School. And he went to the board and he basically turned to the board and said, because of Miss Brown and Miss Levine and the principal and the welding program, you saved my life. I'd be in a life of incarceration forever. Now, adults are going to make decisions based primarily on adult needs. What teachers we want to keep, what's good for us. There's no way Tim Taylor, the head of the program, is going to go back to that board and cut the welding program because that kid spoke up on behalf of that program. I will have to look for other ways to keep the program funded or look at other programs. But a student coming to a school board meeting is a powerful resource. You also have your site councils where there's decisions made on money and programs. You have a voice in there. It's very powerful. And, you know, I have 3 teenagers. You guys are all over these Twitters, Facebooks, and all that. It's a very powerful way to get messages out to your, I mean, you guys have hundreds of thousands of ways to get there. I think when Dr. Ainsworth was in high school, it was the old, you know, walk out of school. They walked out of school about every day to protest something. I'm not encouraging that because these days we arrest kids for that stuff. But I think you have other ways to really get your voice out. This upcoming year is ultra critical. The cuts have been made already, and they're looking at more. The budget coming up is very difficult. But children speaking up on behalf of what helps keep you in school and makes you successful is the most powerful voice you can do, because people like me and Ties and all the teachers union, they're going to speak on behalf of them. And a lot of times we forget you because we're really sitting in a room making numbers decisions.
I know we've got a question out here, so let's move on.
Hi, I'm Taylor Durden, and I'm representing Kennedy High School. In the AB 554, it says that it'll allow a student with the consent of his or her parent or guardian to opt out of the visual or performing arts, foreign language, and PE requirements in high school to replace them with a CTE course. But PE, visual or performing arts, and foreign language classes provide certain skills that the school board believes that the students need. So my question is, how would opting out of these classes to take the CTE class be beneficial? And do you really consider these CTE classes to be more important than these other classes?
Well, I'll take that because I helped my boss write that bill. So, so if you're mad at me, you could blame part of it on me. Well, the reason we looked at and the assembly member decided to put career tech education as an option for graduation was because visual and performing arts and foreign language are a form of career technical education. It's an actual skill set. It's applied learning. I was at Solano Community College, where they have a program designed for people who know how to manage sets and manage you know, how theaters operate and work, but you need a fundamental understanding of drama or the visual and performing arts to advance in that. So that's a career set on its own. Foreign language is another you know, career set that we need as well. Our courts right now in our hospitals desperately need people with other languages to help translate for people who are in the court system or who need advice in the hospital system. And I know that firsthand because growing up as an immigrant and my parents having very limited English, I think at the age of 12, we joke amongst immigrant kids that at the age of 12 you're a paralegal because you're translating everything for your parents, you know. But those are career technical courses in our opinion, in our perspective. So whether it's a foreign language course or a visual performing arts course, or whether it's training to be a lab technician, or whether it's training to be a smog check technician, those are things that are applied learning that advance to graduation. So in the perspective of what does that category mean, in our perspective, that's applied learning. And so that's the reason why we looked at as adding that as a requirement. Now, we could have added career technical education on top of visual and performing arts, but that calls increasing the how long you're in the classroom. That means increasing the school year, which means it's a lot more money. And unfortunately, we don't have the ability to fund that right now. And so in looking at what's the pros and cons here, our goal is to provide education that's going to help students graduate from school. And so if offering more career tech courses is going to help students get connected to school and graduate, then that's a much larger benefit rather than saying, well, you could choose between performing arts or lab technician.
I think I saw a question up here in the front row.
I'm Jonathan from Eleanor Hickey, and I was wondering, since of the budget cuts and the other things, do you guys plan on cutting sports programs such as football and basketball and other programs such as art?
Well, I don't know if the three of us want to cut those, but I think those are the tough decisions school boards are making right now. I mean, I played basketball in college, and I think I watched a lot of my friends. Without sports, they would have dropped out. There's absolutely no doubt. I have friends that were on the fringe, and sports kept us going to school. But if you look at the big picture of a school, if you have $100 and it costs $5 to run the sports program, and it costs $5 to run the English program, you have to make a decision. By law, you have to offer the core classes. Sports is primarily an after-school program, or is an after-school program, and school boards have to keep what they have to keep by law. But you're seeing across the state, especially even here locally, there's discussion of whether sports should go into club activities. Should it kind of remove itself? I would really think that could take away a lot of the spirit of high school. So those are tough decisions. I think as far as the arts, I mean, I'm as passionate about the arts as I am about career tech. I think that's another trigger and a way to keep kids in school. They love it. We see phenomenal things in all of our schools with the arts. But those are very tough decisions that school boards are having to make. There's just, right now, not a lot of money to run anything extra but the core requirements of schools, and that's the decision at hand for the school boards.
Pat, you're at the Department of Education.
Yeah.
You must hear a lot about this particular topic.
Oh, quite a bit. Let me kind of back up and approach it from a different point of view. Right now, we're working on a report relative to Assembly Bill 2648, and it's relative to multiple pathways about the feasibility of creating high schools that are different in California, about the future of high schooling. And what we have in California is, and across the country, is a high school system that was conceived in the late 1800s and early 1900s. It was based on a factory model. We put students in rows in classrooms over a 4-year period. There are bells, just like in the old factories, and you move students through there. And every student is supposed to be moving forward at the same pace. And when those products turn out to be defective, what do? We discard them. So in our current system, our high schools have the time is the constant and learning is a variable. In other words, you're going to be in that seat, and that's how we're going to pay you, and everything's going to be that way, and you're going to go through these courses listed on page 22, whether you like it or not. And maybe you already know that stuff, but we're going to make you sit there and do it. Why don't we have a system where learning is a constant and time is a variable? How about looking at education in a different way, about learning a set of competencies over a 4-year period in both academics and career, and I would submit visual and performing arts, so that a student comes out at the end with a core set of knowledge, much higher than that goofy high school exit exam, which is, middle school and a few high school standards. We have to think about this differently. Oh, and why are we forced to make choices about this? Every student I know that I've worked with in my 40 years or so in this biz went to school because they want to get a job at the end of the process. I mean, is there anybody in here that doesn't want to go to work and be successful someday? I think everybody does. So shouldn't we be preparing all students, regardless of where they hop off the bus, whether it's at the end of high school or at the end of community college or at the end of a 4-year degree, shouldn't we be preparing them with that academic core and the career skills necessary for success so they can manage their life and career and live economically productive? I mean, that's my sense. And so I hate getting into this fight about us and them. English or auto or, art or, PE. It really bugs me that we've gotten into this mindset and we can't get out of it.
I like that. I'd just add one more thing to that. As most of you know, you have English teachers. My dad's an English teacher, and whenever you have a parent that's an English teacher, they're always correcting even your notes at home. I once spoke to a group of English teachers who were a little pinched. Career Tech Ed's not as rigorous as high school English. And you can go online, there's a couple great charts, but I brought this chart of the reading level of an auto manual and a welding manual, which is approaching the 14th grade level, versus a high school novel. And most novels focus between 8th and 10th grade. And that just drove those English teachers nuts. But it's not the same. I said if the children are learning English through, their reading skills and reading levels through an auto manual, they're learning at a college plus level. And it's very hard for the core teacher overall to say, well, they need to take 3 years of English. And my philosophy is what Dr. Ainsworth just said. They can learn English in many, many ways. And if you're reading an auto manual, welding manual, anything in the ag world, those are high-level reading levels. And you can't get through those unless you learn how to read. But you can read what you want to read, not just because it's a book that's coming off the shelf.
Great point. Megan?
My name is Marissa, and I'm representing Madera South High School. Since there is a wide range of ROP classes and a variety of classes that students are interested in, I was wondering where the funding originates to provide the classes with what they need for their students.
Wow.
Uh-oh. Well, we got to Google that. Hold on.
Well, the funding for education originates, some of it's from the state budget. It comes through all kinds of revenue, taxes, and fees. Part of the funding for local school districts comes from their local property tax. At the state level, a number of our programs were called categorical. They were outside the base funding for each student. Let's say you've got $8,000 per student. Well, then the legislature decided we're going to give money for certain programs above that to certain districts for certain purposes. One of those categories is ROP. Another one is adult ed. Another one is special ed or home to school transportation. So the money originates from a number of places. I do think we're challenged to think about it differently relative to career technical education. If we're about, one of the unique qualities about career tech ed is it's about the world of work. It's the only course directly tied to preparing people for their future work. in that case, I think we need to look at what our relationship is with business and industry. And we've been talking a lot with business and industry about them having an increased role in the funding of career technical education, providing work-based learning locations, providing people to come and help teach our students, about providing resources, equipment, and materials. And so we have some phenomenal examples where business and industry are doing that. We're really good in Sacramento and in the past in education and thinking up these real resource-intensive solutions. Now we're forced for the first time to really think, how could we do this differently? Maybe we need to do more of distance learning. There's one program that's been offered by Melior Corporation, free to auto programs, where the students do all their class time work online, and when they go to class, all they do is spend the time in the laboratory applying what they learned at home or outside of school. There are a lot of techniques we could use like that to increase the capacity and the funding of our programs. So,
it's the way we fund ROP centers. We also have categoricals, but we also have levels on how they're funded, and different ROP centers are funded differently throughout the entire state. Some districts get more money than other districts per student, and you wonder why is that. And I think it happened in 1978 during Prop 13 when we locked in how much ROP centers were making, because at that time, before 1978, all regional occupation centers were kind of controlled locally. So local property taxes kind of, some communities put more money into it than others, and then the state came in after Prop 13 and started putting these categorical dollars to try to balance them out. But we're still far from equalization, as they call it, where all ROP centers, whether in Sacramento or Lodi or Modesto, get the same. So we have a very quirky, screwy system of how we fund everything in education. So I'll say that on that piece. And so there's the level of public funding. Now the private funding, generally teachers, academics, and then policymakers or policy consultants like myself, we tend to think sometimes within our own bubble. And then we come up with these ideas about how business needs to come in and pay for things. And so we come up with these ideas and then say, great, now we got to go out and get donors, people to come in and pay for it, because we don't have enough public dollars to pay for it. Well, imagine if your neighbor built a fence and then walked over and said, hey, we share the same fence, I didn't want you to pay half of it. You'd be pretty frustrated that you weren't taken into account first. So one thing that I think we need to start doing when we talk about regional occupation centers, career programs, any type of technical program, is we need to bring in the industry at the very beginning, so that they are being part of the decision-making process and how we develop programs, curriculums, and relevant training that's going to lead them to an immediate job, because these are the people at the end of the day who's going to hire them.
Question?
Hello, my name is Andrea Herrera, and I represent Madera South High. My question is, if the CTE programs are offered more, would the UCs and CSUs become more competitive? Would students in the CTE program be special admits and have a higher admittance? Because in the Assembly Bill 78, it addresses that the 5% rule would be broken. So.
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I think if we look at the behavior of adults, it's pretty much in our court. So, for instance, I work a lot with the community colleges to get high school credit for taking career tech courses. But what happens is you get a room full of high school teachers with a room full of community college teachers, and the community college teachers may say something like, well, you're not teaching college level. The high school teacher says, you're not listening to us, and we have to get them together. It's about the curriculum. It's not about the two people in the room. It's about the curriculum and how it's being delivered. And also, for economic purposes, it's just stupid that a kid is taking a CTE course that hits almost all the parameters of the curriculum of community college, and they don't get the credit, and then they got to go over to the community college and take it. Or even if they get community college, sometimes it doesn't work throughout the state, so they go down to Cuesta down in San Luis, and they go, oh, sorry, that's at Sac City, it doesn't work here. So we have to clean up that system. It's actually picking up pace because of the budget issues and because of some assembly bills, but it's absolutely in the hands of the adults, and we have to step up and get rid of our silos and our territories. I was going to ask just a quick raise of the hands. I mean, how many of you taking college courses while in high school right now? That's great. I mean, you see throughout the state. I was up at Folsom High, talked to a senior, and she's going to obtain somewhere around 28 credits upon graduation. Believe me, the happiest people in the world are her parents, because she's almost now gotten that first level GE out of the way while she's in high school. And I think more of us, we have to provide more of those opportunities for you and really get rid of this old behavior of us and them.
Okay, we've got about 15 more minutes, and so I'd like to make sure we get in a number of additional questions from the audience.
Hi, my name is Lacey. I'm representing North Area Community, and I wanted to know if ROP classes are helping people. Why aren't they mandatory?
I didn't quite hear the end of it.
If ROP classes are helping people, why aren't they mandatory?
Why aren't they
mandatory?
Pardon?
Why aren't ROP classes mandatory?
The fact of the matter is that there are, in 1982 and 83, there was a Hughes Hart Educational Reform Act that established on page 22 those graduation requirements that you can see. And they conspicuously, at that time, based on some reports, focused it on academics. And that's where that started. And so career technical education, vocational ed at that time, was not considered an academic. Interesting, at the community college now classifies career technical education as an academic subject. Mm-hmm. So I think this whole notion is, for the future of high schooling, is if we need every individual in our state, in our country, to be economically productive, how do you do that if you're only one-dimensional? And so I think in your question, the implication that they should be mandatory, I would agree 100%. It's the how we do that at this point to move us forward. And that's what's in question.
It's a great question.
There is that understanding right now that ROP centers and career technical education, vocational hands-on training is very beneficial. And because of that, I mean, AB 2648 is a good example. Dr. Ainsworth mentioned it earlier about this new concept of thinking about how we deliver education. And Assemblymember Furutani was a joint author in this bill to create a law to study how we can deliver this type of education where it's applied learning through your entire curriculum. So it's not just, first through fifth period is math, English, history, and so on, and then your career technical education in the afternoon. It's how do we blend all of this together and provide that for everybody? We have to figure out. We know it's beneficial, so I think there's that understanding, and the state government slowly moving in that direction. But we got more to do.
Hi, my name is Cynthia, and I'm representing John F. Kennedy High School. And my question is regarding the AB 78. It states that there are some barriers hindering high school students from taking community college courses, such as the 5% rule will be removed. And I was wondering, if there's an increase in the enrollment of high school students in community colleges, how will you account for the limited spaces available in the classroom? So how will there be enough room for all these students?
I don't know. Well, I think that's one of the most challenging things that we're faced with right now. My boss is a supporter of AB 78, and it's a difficult choice to make when you have very little money to offer courses for adults, single mothers who are at community colleges, returning veterans who are trying to figure out how to come back to civilian life, people coming out of the correctional system, or just high school dropouts who've just finally figured out what they want to do in life. and then say, well, you know, a 16-year-old, 17-year-old who lives with their mom and dad may take up that seat. So where do you choose? Where do you prioritize? You know, who do you? It's almost like putting a value system, and you don't want to put a value system, and because we feel education should be open to everybody, but it's unfortunately a tough choice we have to make in this time. I think that the thing that we have to continue to do is work on developing how we're going to do it in the future, because once we do have money, we'll come out of this economic downturn. But once we do, we shouldn't be waiting around and saying, oh, now we've got this money, what do we do with it? You know, we have to be able to be ready as soon as the economy turns around to be great. Now we have the resources to put more high school students in community colleges and take these advanced courses and career tech courses. Let's do it.
Yeah, and you have to ask yourself why the 5% rule exists. Mm-hmm. The 5% rule exists because they don't want to spend money. I would submit to you that one of the reasons, as Eric just implied, is that there are a lot of people that messed up during their high school years. And I think the average age is like 27 going back to community college. They go out in the world and knock around for a while, churn in low-end service jobs, and realize, what am I doing? And by that time, they have a couple of kids, maybe a marriage or a failed marriage, and they're trying to just make it. I would think, and I really believe, and I've seen the work on this, that if you got people starting in high school to their career and educational goals in a more seamless fashion that was actually quicker, you'd end up saving money and creating more spaces because you're moving people through that pipeline and getting them to a productive state sooner than later. So, you know, I do think it is a problem, you know, because there would be a financial cost to it in the beginning. But in the long run, I think it could actually be cost effective.
Well, I think it's interesting, too, because what underscores this belief, and I'll ask you what you think, is that 17 and 18-year-olds should know what they want to do with the rest of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one more comment on your community college. I think I read a paper by Jack Scott as the chancellor. It was actually a speech on their trying times. But if you look at some of the community colleges throughout the state, they spend money. My parents are enrolled in a weight training class at a community college that's paid for by tax dollars, and I'm like, why are they offering that class when we have needs to get high school students in there? They need to look at all their courses. What courses are a good use of tax dollars? And those are tough decisions for them because some of those courses have been around a long time. But my parents shouldn't be getting a free weight training class just because they happen to live in near that community college, and that they need to make those decisions to benefit California.
Well, now, Tim, I hope your mom and dad aren't watching this today, so let's move right along.
I'd give them a bad time about it, too.
Hi, my name is Tyson Evans, and I'm representing Lodi High School. As a son of a correctional officer at Mill Creek State Prison, I've noticed that a lot of tax dollars are being poured into the prison system, and it's sad to see that education is suffering from all these cuts when high school is something that can either make or break the rest of your life. And how can the attention be focused more on high school and how we can help high school instead of cutting it, and maybe offer some cuts from the prison system instead?
Wow, that's pretty brave. I thought you were going to defend the prisons there for a second. But, you know, the prisons are a necessary evil in our society. I mean, not that prisons are evil, but we simply have people that get seriously out of bounds and need to be incarcerated. The fact of the matter is that so many of the people in our prisons are functionally illiterate. We helped to create some of this by not ensuring at an early age that they knew how to read and that they had some of these skills. We allow every day, in fact, we have incentives in our state law for schools to discard kids. You get them off your scorecard so that your test scores can look better and your API goes up. Now, I think that is immoral. In fact, we cannot afford to allow children to get lost in our system any longer. And I'm really happy to say that a number of our state policies are fostering that. But we need to do everything we can to create that literacy and to create economic self-sufficiency. People get into moral compromising situations when they don't have enough to live on. When they don't have enough food to eat. They do things that, you know, I've been poor. I didn't cross that moral line, but boy, I was tempted. When you're eating peanut butter and tuna, you know, and not knowing if you're going to make it to the end of the month. You know, it stinks. And a third of our population lives in that situation. So we simply have to make some big choices. We need to invest in education. And then we need to trim the prisons. And we got to find a way to deal with substance abuse. I mean, that's a whole nother issue. But the vast majority of people in prisons have some sort of substance abuse problem on top of this.
Our county office is running a parolee reentry program. So we have about 200 parolees that are enrolled. And really, it looks a lot like a career tech high school. We employ, we train, we get their literacy skills up. But in talking to the parolees, 70% of parolees are rearrested not for another crime, but for a technical violation. So they maybe didn't call their officer, or they tested dirty, and that's just a huge waste of dollars. Not that I don't think they need to be checked on and monitored, but you know, if they're not doing something so serious, and we work very hard with the parolees to make sure they don't violate some of their technical violations, but we also work direct with the parole officer, say, look, the guy messed up over the weekend, don't rearrest him, that's not, let's keep him in our program, he or she's working, let's not waste the dollars. And I think the other thing is just the cost of it. The old California Youth Authority, it costs $252,000 a year to house one CYA 16 to 24-year-old kid. $250,000. You could send them to Harvard for 4 years for 1 year of that. That is just frightening, to spend $250,000 a year on a kid just to be in a prison. I think that is just a waste of dollars.
You know, we've kind of, as a state, we've kind of exacerbated this problem to the point where we are under the federal government's control about how much money we spend on prisons. I mean, we've overpopulated our prisons so much that the federal courts have come in and said, you have to fund this amount of money for the prisoners' needs, because we've basically grown our own prison population. And we've done that for the last 2 to 3 decades by the different types of laws we've passed and ways that we respond to issues like drugs, crime, impoverished communities, and a lot of it comes down to education. I mean, I grew up in a rural community where meth was pretty predominantly used. It was a common thing, and I remember being in my senior shop class. We were building some trailers for a local farmer, and a friend that I went to school with since first grade could not read a ruler because he didn't understand fractions. Couldn't figure out what 3/4 from 7/8 was. So, and this is a 17-year-old person. And you think about, well, what's the likelihood of, what's the future for him? This is a person you personally know, and you figure out either they can't read or they can't add, or they, or they're just not engaged with what lies ahead with them. It's like, what's their future? And I was fortunate enough that while I wasn't a great student in high school, I lucked out and ran into a college counselor that helped me out and get into Sac State, but that was more luck than it was what I picked up in school. So I think we're creating our own problem in the prison system because we've forgot how much it really costs to educate students. The real true cost of education, and if you want to pontificate, the enlightenment of people.
Okay, a critically important issue and something that you're going to continue to hear a whole lot more about. So pay attention. I think we've got time, Megan, for one last quick question, do we? Okay, all right, so we're going to do 3 questions, and I think maybe what we'll try to do is have one panelist respond to each question.
Hi, my name is Alejandra. I'm representing John F. Kennedy High School, and I'm looking at AB 78, and it's saying that it authorizes K through 12 students to enroll in community college classes for advanced scholastic work. How does this benefit students, let's say from kindergarten to 6th grade? What kind of college classes would they be available to enroll in?
Yeah, well, it wasn't intended for K through 6th. It was intended for high school students, predominantly probably 16-year-olds or so, who are prepared for college-level work. And those students who are prepared for college-level work, this is a huge benefit because we can get them into the college system quicker and out faster. Another cost is that students no longer are graduating out of a 2-year college in 2 years or a 4-year college in 4 years. It's taking 5 or 6 years. And that's an expense that we're incurring for future students. So the benefit of allowing students to go to college when they're 16 or 17 makes room for other kids in the future, or returning students or returning veterans.
Okay.
Hi, I'm David Bracken. I'm the student council president for Leo Ipometer. It seems like when I started the school, everybody above grades ahead of me were enthusiastic about graduating and getting a life. But it seems like ever since I became a senior, everybody below me has lost their interest in school. Is there any way we can improve this?
Any way we can improve this?
Or get people interested in school again?
Well, you're the president. You're the class president. We'll
say something similar.
Yeah. You know, that's, I don't know if it's a sign of the times or a generational thing or what, but, you know, it really takes each one of us to bring a sense of optimism and hope and joy to each other's lives every day. And I can't tell you the thousands of students I've met in my lifetime, and every single one of them, in my world, I wanted to bring that sense to them, that they can be. I remember working with the most troubled gang members in Riverside City, and putting them in a summer program where we had them rebuild an old house into a safe home for runaways. And these guys all came, all tough, all ganged out, you know, doing the signs and all this. And their heads were down all the time. At the end of that summer, every single one of those students walked away. All changed. They were all buff. They'd been working hard. They had money in their pocket. Their head was high. Every single one of them graduated from high school, and every single one of them was employed by one of the contractors that worked on that job. It was transformational. And so I think it starts with me doing something for somebody else. And when I'm in a position of authority, just like you are as a student body president, and just like I say to my staff every day, we have a unique position and responsibility to change people for the better and to assist them in growing. So, you know, I think it really takes that kind of personal commitment on everybody's part to stop a friend from doing something, from going, and if they don't know how to read, not judge them, but help them. And so, you know, I want to ask them this question, and I'd be asking every one of your teachers, how does this apply to my life? You know, what are we going to do to make this more meaningful? The teachers are going to hate me. But, you know, and the principals and everybody. I think it starts with you. But thank you.
Okay, final question.
My name is Billy Moore. I'm with Carson Creek High School. And since my stay at Carson Creek, we've had 2 ROP hands-on classes removed, and we had a digital audio class put in. And I heard you say earlier that a hands-on class will be better. It'll benefit you more.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at what's trying to be designed in high schools is what's relevant to the kid to help you really do better in all your subjects. And you know, I would be remiss in not giving Kennedy High School some props because they have a new culinary academy that I went and saw. It's beautiful. It's a great program. I think at Carson Creek, you know, we've got digital media up there. We've got a great landscape and welding. All those are about really trying to engage you to become better citizens, more productive citizens, and do better in school. And I think Bernadette will probably wrap it up for us, but I really encourage you. I think it's really important that you can just take today and go with it, or take today and become more active. I leave you with this quick little story. I took my daughters to go see Across the Universe, the movie, which is about the 60s and movement. But I got in the car with them and I said, what are you guys doing? You got a war going on, you got economy going on, and you're more worried about cheer practice, you know. And I told them to get a little active and try to be more vocal. And one of them was in the yearbook and the other was in the newspaper. And my daughter took her stance. She put the peace sign in the back of her car. She goes, I can't cause any type of riot at school, but I wanted to make a statement. But she also got more active what she could do within the school campus on awareness and what's happening. Same challenge to you. You can go back to your school and do your same old thing, or start looking at some of the suggestions you heard today, because I think career tech really, like Dr. Ainsworth said, this is an 1800s model, some of your schools. It's time for us to freshen them up and move them forward so your kids will have much better schools.
Okay. I think several of us were at an engagement last Friday where we heard a speaker at Linking Education and Economic Development describe college as any number of activities beyond high school that could involve career technical studies, 2-year community college, serving in the military, a skilled apprenticeship, or going on to a 4-year institution. And what that says to me is that clearly when we're talking about careers, one size does not fit all. And the work that you've begun learning about today can take you to the next step in terms of figuring out for yourself what your next steps will be in your own life. And I'll just leave you with the thought that living in a democracy is not only a privilege, but also a responsibility. And when we care deeply about something, it is our responsibility to get involved in it. You've been a great audience. I'd like to have a round of applause for an absolutely wonderful panel. And on behalf of LegiSchool and the Center for California Studies, thank you very much.
Hey, you guys, okay, real quick before you go, you're going to have to exit.